Hello everyone. So this question came up not so long ago, mostly because in isolation we've been playing a lot of Mordhau, a lot of Bannerlord, etc. Somebody asked me, so what is the correct way to run with a sword? And I don't think anyone's really addressed it. Now, as to what is the correct way, I don't have that answer for you. There's nothing written, at least in Western sources. I don't know if any Eastern sources might have gone into it, talking about, hey, if you need to run, this is how you do it with X, Y, and Z weapon. That just doesn't exist. So first off, let's talk about why you might be running with a sword. And in general, I advocate don't run with swords, kids. It's not safe. But some situations in which you might need to. In a one-on-one situation, probably not something that's going to come up a whole lot unless you're running that way, away from them. In a multiple-person situation, it does actually come up. Fiore's advice in regards to dealing with multiple opponents is to make your way to one side or the other of their formation, if you will, because they're going to come up at you in kind of a line, maybe partially staggered. So that way you've got them lined up and are fighting them essentially one at a time. And if they start to come around one side or the other, you just go to the other side of the line, so you've always got a couple people in between you and the whole number of them. Not bad advice, and that does require some sprinting. So that is one situation. The other situation in which it's come up is when I've been taking part in melees. I've played as a heavier guy, I've played as a lighter guy. I mostly play as a heavy guy these days because I have armor. But the ability to sprint rapidly has come up. Either I need to close distance, I need to flank, or I may be withdrawing, in which case sometimes I need to just get out of there. And I'm going to cite some personal instances as we go along. So the first weapon we're going to run with is just a one-handed sword. So in this case I have a messer. So this, relatively simple to run with. All I need to do is pretty much keep it here, immobilized. I would recommend running with your point forward. Don't run with your point down because it can catch stuff and then you've got problems. Right about here, basically in Flug, it's not going to catch anything. If I fall, it's probably not going to kill me. If I fall, I can throw it away from myself or what have you. You could also just run with it held up here, but that's a little awkward. And I'm going to run to show you what it looks like. That one feels a little more awkward to me, so just right here is relatively immobilized. If for whatever reason you have to have your blade up, or what have you, I recommend holding it out this way as opposed to this way. This way you're going to fall on it, this way you can cast it away from you, much like if you were walking with a bow or a rifle. So, let's show that. Here we are. That grass is nice and soft. So, this is the way I recommend running with the one-handed sword. No problem, very low impact, not hard for me to come up into guard afterwards. It doesn't impact me whatsoever. So, that's the way I recommend with that. Now, the two-handed sword, things get a little bit more complicated. So my first melee, I fought with a longsword predominantly. I was in a mail shirt, I wore a breastplate for part of it, then I ditched that, and a kettle helmet. So that meant I was decently light as a player, and so oftentimes I would go out on wide flanks, or I would chase people down, etc. So, when it comes to the longsword, of course I can just hold it in the one hand, much like I just did. That's not terribly difficult for me to do, doesn't impact me in the slightest. I just bring it back up in my hand when I'm ready to fight, or I can still defend myself if I need to with the one hand. Okay, no big deal. When it comes to holding in a two-handed grip is where things get a little more interesting. This is okay, so this is essentially movie guard, right? But it's to the outside. Like I said, I don't recommend holding it to the inside, that just messes up your movement. This, my arms can still move naturally and help me balance. My sword is away from me, so if I fall, it's not a big deal. The only downside of this is you run the risk of, poking your buddy if he's running next to you, so that's a little bit of a pain. This one is the one I probably use the most, and on all the vids I've seen of myself playing, I have mostly been going with this. You can also run in the half sword. Not too difficult, just right here. Again, my arms can pump just fine. If I fall, I'm not really in danger because I can, again, cast it away or even catch myself. So that works just fine. Let's talk about some others, though. So one that we've probably all seen because we've played For Honor would be the Warden, is what I call it. In which case, you're holding it by the strong of your left hand and running it with an underarm grip, essentially. This is probably if you had it here on the grip, this would be the safest way to run with it, because if I fall, there is pretty much no way I'm going to cut myself. You know, it's point down, it's all safe there. The issue with having your hand on the grip is now I can't immediately go into defending myself. I mean, I can somewhat, but I'm not in a great position to launch a counterattack. So I would have to take my left hand off, slop this up. It's slow. If I have it on the guard like the Warden does, then I can just grab and I'm here. But that means if you're running it with the strong, you can also move into the half sword pretty quickly, which is nice. But overall, it's okay, but it's slower than just running like this. So either way, now I'm going to show you those so that you get an idea of this. I'm going to now run back and forth across my lawn like a tin. So I won't show this one because I showed that one before, but starting off with here, no problem. Next one, the half sword grip. Again, no problem. Warden grip. I will say on that last one, I was able to build up a little bit more speed, so that's intriguing. I can probably get the same effect this way. Either way though, that's how I found a run with the longsword. But odds are, if you're on the battlefield, you're probably equipped not just with a sword. You might also have a spear. This is the longest spear I own. It is, I think, about 8 feet tall. Maybe only, no, probably about 8. And the reason I've chosen this particularly long spear is because, one, you want a decently long spear if you're going to be fighting. You will see some shorter spears, absolutely, but around this length as a lightly armored person is what you want. The reason I've also chosen this longer spear is because I have personal experience running with these and the unique situations that arise from them. So if you're fighting in formation, you're going to be left foot forward and defending yourself like this. We're all right-handed in the formation. So this would be my starting position and my ideal ending position. That's not to say if I was fighting I wouldn't, switch around, do other spear stuff, but if I'm fighting with buddies on either side of me, or I'm expecting to, or if I'm in armor, I'm gonna be left foot forward like this. So, with that in mind, that's the position I'm going to be trying to return to and start from. So, what are some ways of running with it? So, we'll start off with front rankers, then move to back rankers. So if I'm in the front rank, that means if I'm moving up, I need to have my spear point presented immediately when I finish. So, best ways to run with it, in my opinion then, would be pretty much just couch it, bring it up. You can have spear point straight ahead of you, or if you're more worried about it bumping into stuff or need clearer vision, I can lower it slightly. This is essentially me just tucking up like I would with a rifle and running with the point down, which again is pretty safe. I can of course raise it if I'm going to run into somebody, or something happens, I can ditch it. If I fall forward, it's going to go off to the side. I'm pretty safe in that regard. So that's one way, is just couching it, running like this. The other way that might occur is to tuck it upward. So you either tuck it down, or you tuck it up. Tucking up is also pretty safe. I mean, I'm not going to stab my buddies. If I fall, I can brace myself or throw it away from me. The downside of this one is that it catches on stuff. So, like I said, this spear is about 8 feet long. We were doing a melee in Laurel, Mississippi, where I was one of the less armored guys, but decently well armored, so I was on the armored team. It was about 9 of us versus about twice our number of lightly armored guys, and our job was to cross from one side of the forest to the other, so they were ambushing us constantly. At one point, I saw an opportunity to do a flank on the guys that we were fighting who were being cagey and slowing my column down, so I flanked around, which meant I had to run through some pretty thick bush. I had an axe, and I tried to run with it like this, and it was catching everything. So I ended up just tucking it like this and curling myself up. I believe I had the kettle helmet on at the time. I might have had the salette, but I didn't care about brush hitting me in the face, which was not something I'd thought of until that point. When you've got a decently complex helmet, you don't care anymore. But I just kind of curled myself up and barreled through the thick brush. Running like this was slowing me down. It was catching stuff. If I ran into somebody, I was gonna possibly be slowed. Any sort of helmet, it just limits your ability to see, to perceive what's around you. And so, you know, you'd feel it snag and you couldn't quite tell what had hooked it. In the case of an axe, it could entangle itself a heck of a lot more than just the spear does. So, this one, good for open field, not so great if you're going to be going under any tree cover. And in fact, I think even running just under that, I'm probably going to clip that tree. We shall see. So that's how the two recommendations I have for front rankers. So I will now show those. Oh, and of course you could also do the just one hand. That works too. Not sure why you would. I don't know. But if for whatever reason you need to, this works just fine. All right. Here I am starting off. No problem. Now the point high. Okay, I lucked out and didn't clip the tree. That was nice, but it probably came pretty close. And now, I suppose the underarm. Or one arm, rather. That wasn't bad. It was better than I thought it would feel. So, as for the front rankers, when you're a second ranker or a third ranker, things change a little bit. So, being in the second rank, odds are you're probably going to be fighting like this, even maybe with this reversed, because I need to reach over my buddy. So that means my starting position is probably going to be here. That changes things significantly. So, some options. Firstly, I don't want to stab my buddy in the back as I run, so if I do this, I'm going to run into him if he stops suddenly. So that's out of the equation. I can tuck it up, in which case I do run into the possibility of snagging something, but this is probably my safest bet, is running just like this. So I go from here to here. Pretty natural to run with too. So that's really the main recommendation I have for them. So I'm going to go ahead and show that one. Not too difficult. So, if you're a third ranker, odds are you're probably not even having your tip lowered yet. You might be, depends upon how hot of a fight it is. In which case you're probably standing just at the ready, in which case you're going to be here, maybe here, something along those lines. Maybe even you might have it resting on the ground. But in that situation, what you might see is people shouldering their arms and running like this. This is pretty comfortable to run with. Just holding it right there, not too difficult. Right shoulder I don't like, left shoulder feels great. I don't necessarily know if this would come up a whole lot because I've not been in the third rank all that much. If it does, like I said, this is pretty comfortable. Main disadvantage is it could run into things. So I'll show this one and then we'll call it a day. This one I'm sure is going to clip the tree. So I'm a third ranker, just hanging out, life's good. Time to move forward. Yep, clip that tree at the ready, and I can come forward if necessary. So, just a little one-off vid about running with swords. Again, in general, you don't need to do it. And in general, you shouldn't do it. But if the situation presents itself, that's some things that I found works. When it comes to more complex things, like, let's say you've got a basket hilt. Just hold it right there. You know, you move your arm around, things get more complicated. If your sword is still in its scabbard, you may find even if you're running, and I suppose that is a situation in which I might want to one-hand the spear, is if I've got this flopping around. One, I should secure it better, but I might put my left hand here to keep this secure and run like that. So that's a possibility. Another possibility, I suppose, if I was doing Pop-A-Lite stuff. Anyway, though. So those are just some thoughts I had. I figured I would put them onto film because there's not much else to do. Otherwise, though, stay safe, stay healthy. Don't run with swords, but if you do, be smart about it. We'll go over some other techniques and thoughts another time.